Hi, I'm Mohammed. I am the narrative lead on Apex Legends.
And I'm Griffin Brennan-Dean. I'm a game designer on Apex Legends.
And today we'll be talking about each and every legend in Apex Legends.
New season, let's go! Awesome! Whoa, what a rush!
Our first new character drop, his name is Octane. Octavio Silva. Octane's main thing is speed. We're bringing back Stim from Titanfall 2.
Yeah.
And we really liked the idea of the people running the gauntlet in Titanfall 2 and putting up the YouTube videos, and the way they did it was by launching themselves with a grenade blast. So, Octane's backstory is that he blew off his legs with a grenade blast trying to beat the world record at the gauntlet, and now he's got these like brand new
Robo legs
that make him basically be able to run fast.
Yeah.
And he uses Stim. He is 100% about the adrenaline rush more than anything else.
He feels like someone who's involved in extreme sports.
Yeah.
He's much
an
more
athlete.
like he's
an extreme athlete.
He's an extreme athlete.
Yeah.
You go really fast when you use the Stim ability. He inflicts a little bit of health damage to himself, but his passive is that he regenerates health over time at a slow rate.
He's got this little dialysis machine attached to him that's basically filtering his blood very slowly, filtering the Stim out of it.
His ultimate is a jump pad that the whole squad can use, and you can bounce grenades off of it or other character abilities. So you can use it to launch yourself over enemy squads. You can use it to launch yourself up onto ledges and stuff, the way that you use a Pathfinder. My personal favorite thing is you can do things like bounce a Gibraltar bubble dome off of the thing, and wherever it lands,
you follow.
you can then, it will deploy and you can follow it. You can bounce jump pads off of jump pads and create chains of jump pads.
Real men use iron sights. I use heavy artillery.
Unlike previous characters that I've helped write, it was a strong black woman in the role, right?
Yeah.
And I remember one of our audio guys told me, his sister was a Marine, and their whole family came from this very, very proud, just military background.
Yeah,
and it was
military
super,
service,
super important to them.
Yeah.
You know, Bangalore comes from a strong military background.
Exactly.
And she's actually ex-IMC, which I know is often considered the bad guys of the Titanfall universe.
Yeah.
But not from her point of view. From her point of view, she has a very proud military history, and I like that about her. You know what I mean? She's definitely a good guy. So my senior writer at the time hated Bangalore because you guys wanted basically a easy for beginners to understand, just soldier characters.
So it was trying to solve a couple problems. It was trying to make a sort of meat and potatoes, straightforward soldier character. It was trying to solve a major offensive problem we had in our maps, which is how do I advance a squad against a defensive position over a large swath of open ground, where it's before Bangalore, you can charge, but you're just going to get hosed. A lot of people ask where the name Bangalore came from. There were two things that was influencing it. One is the Bangalore torpedo, and it found service clearing defensive structures like the barbed wire on the beaches of Normandy. The whole mechanical set for Bangalore came from the Punjab soldiers that served in the Indian arm of the British military during World War I. Those soldiers had to cross massive swaths of no man's land and all that stuff. And so smoke and the type of bombardment that Bangalore employs is what's called a creeping barrage. And so that's a barrage that you synchronize with a group of infantrymen where it lands about 50 to 100 yards out.
Basically, your team needs to move with it
to
encroach on the other position. Yeah.
I'm personally proud of what the team has accomplished in terms of the characters, is that I feel like mechanically, writing-wise, animation-wise, in terms of voice acting, you're not just playing a mechanical set that has a personality, you are that character.
Right.
That combination of the determined tone and you're not going to knock me over, I'm going to knock you over. When you get shot at, you don't have to get hit, but when you're taking fire and you're running, you double time, you move faster. We implemented that to give people confidence to just close with people. And you can be under withering fire and just keep pushing no matter what. The smoke launcher allows you to advance your squad, and you can use that in a defensive role and an offensive role. It's highly flexible. It deals damage, and so the hit numbers can tell you how many occupants of a building there are. And then, of course, there's the bombardment. But to me, the whole thing ended up being very powerful as an entirety as well, because it ended up being an homage to African American regiments like the Harlem Hellfighters who fought during World War I. Right?
That actually was one of my inspirations.
Yeah.
Never forget the eyes of Bloodhunder.
Bloodhound's one of my favorites, actually.
I am Bloodhunder.
The important thing to take away with Bloodhound is that Bloodhound is a character that is designed all around starting and entering fights from as best a tactical perspective as possible, in that you have information about where enemies have been, what they've done. The ultimate allows you to see through a lot of sort of defensive obfuscation, smoke, gas, and all that stuff, and track people better. So if someone's trying to flee from a Bloodhound, it's just not going to happen.
They're the ultimate hunter.
Yeah, like if you're wounded and crawling away from a Bloodhound, that's, unless someone's covering you, it's just not going to work. I'm sorry, you're just kind of done at that point. The character doesn't inherently have any defensive abilities. The idea is if you understand what your enemy is capable of, your enemy's position, and you have more information about your enemy than they have about you, you can make decisions and control when the fight happens, where it happens, and if you make all of those things favorable to you, you win. And if you know if you're being followed by a Bloodhound, you can actually use the fact that the Bloodhound can follow you reliably to bait them into traps, to ambush them. As we go through all the characters, we'll talk about this, but a lot of them are sort of designed in a sort of an ecosystem where they're meant to have strengths and limitations so that they're sort of interreliant as a fighting unit. And I think that's what makes sort of that baseline squad play interesting.
It's not any hard counters to anything.
Yes. And also, you have 3 members and there are 4 roles. So we have our offense, defense, recon, and support characters. And so there's 4 roles, but you're always lacking 1 role in the squad, which means that you have to supplement that deficit with teamwork or strategy. The squad is always going to have some weakness in some area. I think the community has been very accurate with the Bloodhound Bangalore combo.
Absolutely.
Yeah, so they're both a very powerful assault unit in that the Bloodhound can say, this is where the enemies are, and then the Bangalore can focus on the obfuscation of the smoke with the pulse and the ultimate.
I mean, that's the key one,
Yeah,
right?
it is.
Yeah,
It
like
is,
one
it's
specializes in blocking vision, the other one sees through it.
Yes.
So.
If you are playing Bangalore, you always want to listen for Bloodhound audio cues, because if you hear a Bloodhound that is not your Bloodhound do the combat scree, you
don't want to put the smoke down.
Yeah, you don't want to put the smoke down.
Because it only hurts your team, basically.
So the tracking ability, one of the big things that we had a problem with was originally it was not tied to mobility stuff. So things like mantling, running, all that stuff didn't generate evidence markers. It was only things like gunshots, blood. Fighting isn't a moving thing. It's more kind of like a puddle. So you just get this big cluster and you're like, yeah, there's death boxes and people fought here. You're telling me what I already know. So adding the mobility element to that really helped so that it was much more of a, you get more breadcrumb trails across the map.
Bloodhound was a tough one. I based the character's personality off of an amalgamation of one of my favorite Viking characters and a couple of my close personal friends. One of them's non-binary and the other one is gender fluid. They had a big impact on me, and I realized I would really like to have a character that represented a non-binary person.
It is your honor to face me.
I knew from the beginning, because I was making a non-binary character, that I wanted them to have an androgynous voice, because I wanted anyone to be able to feel like they could put themselves into that role.
Yes.
It's super important to the whole company to have, inclusion and diversity and representation. The people who make these games, us included, the people who play these games, they come from all walks of life. Like, the world is diverse.
There's so many cultures and so many things that people haven't seen before in their daily lives or that they might not be familiar with.
Definitely not that, like, we hit everything out there, but we're
no.
trying.
We're trying. We're working on it.
We're trying. We're working on it.
Yeah.
There's more characters coming.
It's a process. It's a process.
This is my favorite part.
Gas Man.
Yeah,
So,
Gassy Boy, as the internet says.
Originally, when we wrote Caustic, we wrote him as a good guy.
I
You remember
still
that?
remember that meeting.
Yeah. This doesn't feel right. I'm going around gassing people. I don't
so-
feel like I'm the good guy.
The original fantasy from a mechanical standpoint was sort of the monster in the fog. You can't see very well, you can't breathe very well, you can just hear this ventilator coming through the gas. And you don't know where he is, but he's getting closer. And it's sort of like, it was sort of like our game's version of the hatchet drag in a horror movie. When the first pitch to make him sympathetic came through, I remember bringing up the actual guy who invented mustard gas in World War I. That nature of warfare is such a inhumane method of conducting warfare that I think, it's weird to say that, I'm glad that Caustic came to embody that.
The good guy angle.
Good guy gas man.
It wasn't working. I was
Yeah.
like, all right, let's take this back to the drawing board. And
Yeah.
like, I remember I had that conversation with you, and I was like, all right, right, well, let's turn him into a sociopath. Very pragmatic, like human
Yeah.
life means less than science kind of attitude.
Yes.
Yeah, one of the hardest things to bring this character to life, it's going to sound weird, but the head.
So there was a version where he looked like the Pyro from TF2.
Oh, I do
And
remember. That was
then,
old, though.
And
That was
that
super
was
old.
super old. And then there was
hazmat.
B-Man
Yeah, the
Caustic,
B-Man
where
costume.
we referred to him as B-Man Caustic because he looked like a beekeeper, like just a big yellow beekeeper, and he couldn't move his neck, so he's doing
Like, it was
this
worse than
weird,
Batman.
like-
It wasn't
yeah.
that he couldn't be, like, if he was sideways, you basically couldn't see his face at all.
Yeah, he was like...
You couldn't tell he was looking at you to fire at you. We kept it all the time. We tried to work with it, but animation was having one hell of a time with it.
Yeah.
And eventually we ended up going with the goggles, gas mask, crazy hair, beard. And like as soon as we saw that costume,
Yeah.
we were like, okay, no,
Yeah.
that's clearly awesome.
The biggest debate that we sort of had with him, more or less, is the gas affecting teammates. In some of our previous projects, we'd had team colored abilities and all this stuff where, you know, this would be this color if it was good, and this would be this color if it was bad. And all stuff. From a simplicity standpoint, we tried to make it that all caustics are immune to all caustic gas. Everyone else is affected. We don't want team damage because that's not.
It's a
it's
synergistic team game.
Yeah.
If your team is damaged, then
Yeah.
they have to stay away from you. In all games, including Battle Royale games and ours too, there's a lot of just learning that you need
Yeah.
to like for example,
Yeah.
the caustic gas tanks. Not a lot of people know this, but if you shoot the base, they go
they're
away.
figuring it out.
They're figuring
They're
it out now.
figuring it
Yeah,
out,
yeah.
yeah.
But in general, we don't like secret knowledge, and that was like
Yeah.
that was one of those. Is like, how do I learn
This, yeah.
which gas is like the one that doesn't hurt me versus the one
Yeah.
that does?
Yeah.
I think it was just easier to be like, okay, well, I know if I go into this gas, it's going to affect me.
Yeah.
The whole
Yeah.
company plays the game constantly, every
the
single
time.
day. At 4 o'clock, we play the game, whatever the latest, working build is.
Yes.
And
Yeah.
like that's really the key to like character balance and also likability. Like,
Yes.
finding out what characters like their personalities, like Caustic. You know, what I
Yeah.
mean, if we never played him, I would have never found out that personality, no matter how well written, didn't match the character.
Yeah. Yeah. No.
Yeah, animation. Once we were like, yeah, this is the monster in the closet. This is the evil guy
Yeah.
in the smoke.
Yeah.
Animation ran with it.
Well, they went ham with like on the Gladiator, like him holding up Lifeline's drone like this, like he's like he's like giving somebody like a bag lunch almost. Like he's like, I brought this for you. Like
I'm like a rock, but rocks don't hit back.
Gibraltar. Gibraltar was one of the first characters.
he was the first
first character.
Yeah, the
He
first character
probably
for
went through the most visual changes, art style wise. He was very military Titanfall 2
Yeah.
look, and like he's definitely kept a lot of like
Yeah.
that, just like with the packs on him and everything.
Yeah.
Once we decided we were making a character game and we wanted to like branch out into like more interesting characters than just
Yeah.
military characters.
I named him Gibraltar, and I fought because for a while nobody thought that the name Gibraltar was like nobody will be able to remember that name. But I pushed for it, and I feel like Manny may have made him Polynesian initially because of the Rock of Gibraltar. I think it may have been a Dwayne the Rock Johnson reference.
Right.
For a while there was talk of him being Maori, there was talk of him being Samoan, and then we sort of decided that we wanted to sort of cover as many of sort of the Pacific Islands as possible. In and of itself, I think it's its own cultural continent that's not widely represented in many games, and so I think bringing it to this was just important. We don't just want it to be an accent or that sort of thing.
Right.
Like
You,
things.
you don't want it to be just surface level
Yeah,
comical.
yeah, and so things like the Patu or Mare Club, the Jade or Whalebone War Club, we sort of talked about things like the Haka and the significance of this because it's such a, I think, important part of those cultures and those warrior traditions and all of those things. Gibraltar is a warrior in a lot of ways.
And speaking to matching, personality to gameplay,
Mm-hmm.
so that character is definitely a shield for the team, right?
Yes.
Like very protective of the team,
Yes.
and like so when my senior writer Manny went out to write him, he created this whole backstory about Ceres, which is the
Search and
Rescue,
Yeah.
Search and
Acronyms.
Rescue Association of Solace, which Solace is a planet. His parents grew up basically saving people, and when him and his boyfriend got into a motorcycle accident, his dad lost his arm
Yeah.
to save him, and that really touched him. So when he grew up, you know what I mean, that stuck with him, and Manny even created a motto for this imaginary search and rescue organization, which is the shield to protect those in need.
Yes,
and that
yeah.
very much so matches Gibraltar's personality, right? Like he's a warrior, he's a fighter,
Yeah.
but first and foremost, personality.
He's protecting
He's a
people.
protector. He
Yeah.
likes protecting people.
Yeah.
Right.
Over the course of the character's development, a lot of people drew parallels between Bangalore's bombardment and Gibraltar's bombardment. But I do feel like in the final shipping game, they fill two fundamentally different roles.
Because it's meant to working with your
with
dome.
your shield. So if you throw the bombardment and then drop the thing, you can do a hammer and anvil tactic where you can basically create an exclusion zone that pushes people away, and during that 15 seconds
or
you can heal.
pushes them into
Or
your
yeah,
shield.
they have to pick. They have to pick one.
Yeah.
They either have to basically step into the ring or back off.
Right, yeah.
The character is a character that tries to maintain distance and spacing. It's very important for you to have sniper battles because of the shield. You always if they fire and you fire at the same time, they're going to hit your shield and break your shield, and you're going to destroy them. Yeah. Some people
want to push with them, but you shouldn't actually. So Gibraltar and Caustic are both defensive characters.
Yes, yeah.
Whereas Caustic wants you to come in close to him.
Yeah, Gibraltar
right?
wants
to keep you. Yeah. So the best way to play Gibraltar actually is as a long-range defensive character.
You play backfield, and if if something goes wrong, you have tools for doing damage control. You can throw the bombardment out and block a zone where people are coming in. You can cut people's retreats off. If you're in a building, you can drop it on the house. Watching people play Caustic Lifeline, Gibraltar, Caustic will block all the doors, and Lifeline will heal, and Gibraltar will peek windows. And if a squad gets too aggro, tries to push in, say the first floor, they're like, oh, there's Caustic gas here, and then Gibraltar's like, and there's also a bombardment outside, so either come in with us or
get screwed.
Get screwed. And so it's very much gives you a lot of flexibility for forcing people's hands. And as the meta evolves, there's going to be more room for tactical gameplay and ability usage, and basically forcing people who may be better shots than you into bad positions and leveraging that sort of strategic high level to win matches that you wouldn't be able to win in a heads-up gunfight.
Right.
Yeah.
Remember this, I'm the one you should have concerns about.
I like Lifeline a lot.
Who doesn't like Lifeline?
Who doesn't like Lifeline? She's so spunky.
The drone.
The drone came on by, and what if she's drumming on the drone, and the drone's like her friend? And I'm like, I love this. Lifeline having that thing to emote with just made it so much easier to kind of find the personality on the mocap stage.
Yeah.
A lot of times we have an idea when we go onto the mocap stage, and sometimes those ideas come through 100%. Other times we find the character on the mocap stage.
Yeah. The moment I remember very specifically in Lifeline's development was actually pretty late when the facial animations came in, because I feel like Lifeline is particularly expressive, and the one that I think of specifically is the legendary where she spins the healing syringe like a pistol and then catches it, and there's this sort of look of joy where she's almost surprised.
It's funny you mentioned that, because so all of our characters, we model them with a very blank expression, right? So for somebody like Caustic, it works, right?
Yeah.
You don't need a lot of facial animation to see the evil. But in a character like Lifeline, whose voice is so fun and
having that dead face,
it's
really just, you're like, what's going on?
Yeah, it's hard. And I remember the first time Lifeline's face was animated. Yeah. I fell in love with her. I was she's so adorable.
You don't see the whole thing come together until
the very end.
Until something like those, for me at least, specifically those facial animations. And even for a character that's so lighthearted and stuff like that, some of the executions are actually pretty dark.
Yeah.
But my favorite one is still the Doc Shock one where she pulls the cable off the drone and shocks the person. The look on her face when she turns and looks at the drone,
and she's like, do it.
She's just like, yeah, just do it. And it's so mischievous. It's amazing. Core mechanical set was to really sort of make a combat medic, someone who would feel comfortable running out to help teammates under fire. We don't just want a healing character, we want a character that feels like they're putting themselves at risk to help their team. One of the big things we were trying to figure out with Lifeline from a general gameplay balance standpoint for a long time was, in a game where your goal is not to die, how do we make sure that a character who is really good at making you not die, doesn't become the meta, where things like damage interrupts and stuff like that make it so that you can't use the drone to heal through damage if you're directly under fire and that sort of thing. And so we had there's an interesting duality of the character, of some of the abilities you need to use in cover and all that stuff, but others, the Wraith, you're supposed to use just right in the middle of combat when there are bullets flying and all this stuff. Probably on the same level as Wraith, I would say. There's not many more characters that you need to worry about more than losing track of where a Lifeline went, because as soon as you lose track of the lifeline, that means she's going to come back with like 10 billion health and like a bunch of, she's going to be like, she's going to be good. You're going to be like finishing, like trying to finish her friends, and you're going to be run ragged, and she's going to come back like, I've dusted myself off and I'm ready to fight again, and you're just like, oh no, I'm tired and I want to go home, and she's like, oh, you're going home.
Body bag.
In a body bag, exactly.
I gotta admit, I may have tricked you.
So in many ways, Mirage, his personality is based off of me. A bit smarmy, bit talks a little fast, gets out of himself. He's a lovable joke.
It is a lot of fun, though.
It is a lot of fun. Mirage was actually a bit vague, having holopilots of himself and like having fun with them.
Yeah.
And like, kind of like joking with them and like, just basically loving himself a lot.
Yeah.
He's very vain.
Even things like when he's in the menu and, he's going like this, and then there's the wingman in his hand. He's like, oh, where did that come from? And then he like goes like this again, it's gone, or like we're making the bird appear. Like there's a lot of like sort of new old-timey vaudevillian stuff in there that I really love.
Yeah, the animators had a blast.
Oh
of
my
them.
god.
I did a little bit of mocap, but most of the mocap was done by Sean, and he basically said, I thought of you, and then I just exaggerated. And I'm like, I don't know how to take that. Thanks. This Battle Royale is this weird fine line between like, this show that's like all about like battle and fighting and everything, and then like Mirage comes in and he's just like, what's up? I just want to look good.
Yeah. His solo lines when everybody else in his squad is dead.
He's like, and I'm still talking to myself.
Yeah, so he's all the characters have to say everything just for game state stuff, but he's the only one that comments that he's alone and talking to himself.
Just a minute till ring close, and I'm talking to myself. Fantastic.
People don't often talk to themselves, right?
Yeah,
like
yeah.
Caustic was a little bit easy because he's a bit loony and it's not too hard to imagine he likes to hear his own voice.
Yeah,
but most of the other characters, it's like, okay, how do I say this without sounding weird? Because you're talking to yourself, like when the rest of your teammates are dead and you're playing solo.
Yeah.
Mirage was easy.
Yeah,
Mirage was he just almost breaks the fourth wall.
Yeah,
Basically,
yeah,
he's
yeah.
like, this is kind of silly. You know what I mean? I'm
Yeah.
talking to myself, but here I go.
Yeah.
But it fits his character. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
It fits perfectly.
I think of all the characters, he probably has the most attitude. For anyone coming from Titanfall 2 who's familiar with the holopilot thing, like once people see they're like, oh, that's the holopilot guy, there's a little bit of they've got their guard up. But anybody who's coming new into the experience doesn't understand that there's such a thing as a fake guy running around.
Right.
And so you watch a clip of like a guy like send a holopilot around a corner, and like a bloodhound, it was like a cat with a laser pointer, where it just like leaps off of a rock and like starts like trying to like bludge it, and it just like disappears, and they're like,
Well,
and then like
the best part is they're like, I got him. I obliterated. They don't realize it's fake.
yeah. So
granted, that's not going to happen much longer.
Yeah, there's the learning curve.
There's the learning curve. Mirage is actually a great example of how we like to try and come up with like a 1 or 2 or 3 word descriptor for a character. The trickster, like the magician, who's like the vaudevillian, like he's basically putting on a performance in like the holopilots and his personality and everything.
Yeah.
So like, yeah, I just really feel that character like really came together really well.
Yeah, no, it's awesome.
Hey, that's me.
Actually, from a personality standpoint, Pathfinder was pretty easy. He's very much Marvin 2.0 from Titanfall. And we knew that all we had to do was bring that character into this game and give him a voice.
High five?
The community loved the Marvins, these poor little worker bots that had like these like smiley faces and then emoted sad faces
and how they never got high fives.
They never got the faction leader in Titanfall 2, the Marvin, never got a high five.
Yeah.
Like we have to make a playable Marvin.
Yeah.
And he has to get a high five.
Exactly,
right?
yeah.
And like
by force.
By force, right? So like one of the first animations, and I mean very first animations we ever did was Pathfinder basically doing the grapple into the forced high five kill. And that animation, I'm pretty sure, is what spawned the idea of executions. Because we weren't even planning on having executions in this, because we didn't know how to incorporate them. Because in Titanfall 2, if you just went up behind somebody, you'd immediately execute them.
Yeah.
But we're like, well, that's really cheap in a Battle Royale. We're not going to do that.
Pathfinder is an interesting character mechanically because Pathfinder gives you access to terrain and ground that you would not normally be able to fight from. And him making those superior positions available is extremely powerful. So
it's readable.
So you can very easily go like, this is where a Pathfinder has been. I see the squad moving right now. Like, they're not going to do any kind of like crazy wizard magic and
wizard magic.
He's got his mobility and stuff, which helps him in direct fights, but a lot of his abilities focus more on positioning and getting your squad to positions and selecting ground to fight from, more than the actual heavy lifting, like the way that Bangalore or Gibraltar does heavy combat lifting. It's much more sort of intro, outro. Like, he can get your squad out of a really bad situation, too.
Yeah. And he can also, like, scout what's up ahead and then come back pretty easily.
Yeah. His ability, his passive ability, being able to see where circles are down the road. I think as the meta evolves and the meta shifts, pairing him with characters that want to know where the circle is as early as possible is really going to become, I think, an important combo. Because he's giving you tactical information and allowing you to get ahead of more offensive squads and prepare for basically the really aggressive Wraith Bangalore Bloodhound squads. And so I think there's a lot of power in that package. I love the concept art that they did where he's a window cleaning robot and he's got the mop, and in the reflection he's got the rocket launcher and all the guys holding up the signs of "We love you, Pathfinder." And I think it was Manny who was like, he's just a robot looking for purpose by participating in a blood sport. It seems like Marvin's do have a breaking point. Like
the robot revolution.
The robot
revolution,
overlords.
Yeah, be nice to Pathfinder. He'll come get you.
Maybe in another time or space, you killed me, but not this one.
Wraith was one of the hardest characters.
Ooh, yeah.
Oh my God. Like, when you guys finalized on the design of, it's a person who travels between 2 points in space, goes into the void, and she hears voices in her head.
Yeah.
I was like, how am I supposed to contextualize that?
So Phase was a very contentious point on this project. Like, this character went through probably more iteration than I think any other character.
Yeah, we restarted Wraith 3 times.
When we were first experimenting with the concept of characters, we were pulling abilities from Titanfall 2. The first thing that we had in there was Titanfall 2 Phase Shift. It was rough because Titanfall 2 Phase Shift, there's no trail, so you have a person who disappears, reappears at some other random point in space, and can immediately just go guns up and hose you. From a learnability standpoint, like, what do I do about this? And the answer is like, well, don't let Wraith get anywhere near you. Just like run away.
Which is not a valid or fun method to play the game. I mean, that's why you made it so that, like, there's a significant delay between when she comes out of phase and when
the gun's up. Yes, we want the character to be a phase skirmisher, so she's all about not presenting a solid target for people and not overcommitting to fights. Wraith loses when she overcommits to a fight. She's much more about playing the peripheries, harassing from the side, harassing from the rear. She's going to use it to either make lateral movements or cautiously aggressive movements where she might use it to go from like here to some cover up in front of her, but she's not going to go directly up into your face, pop into existence, and then just shotgun you. And so if you lose track of a Wraith, you should be concerned.
Wraith was the hardest character for me to find the focus on. The voices in the head presented like a real problem because our game is a sci-fi game. It's not a fantasy game.
Spooky, scary ghost game.
Right, so it can't be like spirits. So I was watching Donnie Darko, actually, and then it kind of like hit me, what if the void is a window into infinite dimension? And what she's doing is stepping out of this dimension into this void space that's a window into every infinite other dimension, and then stepping back in, right?
Yeah.
And then when she's in that window, she can somewhat see into, you know what I mean, like other possibilities and things like that. In the void, you see little ghost images of Wraith. That's basically infinite versions of her from other dimensions also passing through the void at the same time. And that's what the voices are. They're basically seeing through a window and warning you, like, hey, they see you.
You know, Wraith receives voices about whenever you are being fired at, whenever you're being looked at, grenades, traps, all of this stuff. And the idea is that the portal allows you to move an entire squad. And when you first start using it, it feels highly situational. But the more comfortable you get with it, the more applications you have. If you just think of it as risking only one person while moving 3 people as a value proposition, it becomes very useful in a wide range of scenarios. The combination of being able to hear when someone's aiming at you and then being able to phase out and place the portal the idea is that you can charge a sniper, you can charge a machine gun position, that sort of thing, if your squad is pinned down, and move everybody either up on the position or around the flank or out of harm's way. And you can really pick your fights in a lot of ways with Wraith. And from a mechanical standpoint, she's actually kind of an interestingly selfless character in some ways, in that she's risking herself to save everybody else because she's the only person who is actually move forward and is fully aware of all the consequences of the situation.
Right. It's funny you bring up using the ultimate and the tactical at the same time.
Yes, yeah.
Because this was one of the first characters we created, and that led to us changing our animation systems. Most of the time, we animate the hands like in the first-person view together, and since design wanted to be able to use the portal, but at the same time be able to activate the tactical, we needed to switch up our animation system, and it's a readability thing for the player as well. I can always learn that, like, okay, I'm using the tactical now, I'm using the portal. It just helps reinforce, like the UI and everything else when everything works together, actually.
That's how you do it.
He's definitely an aggressive flanker. I think he'll pair well with Wraith, Bangalore, Bloodhound. I think he's going to sort of fit into that heavy offensive mix. He's an offensive character, but he's not inherently a CQ character other than how you equip him with weapons and stuff like that. So he's much more about closing, flanking, running down fleeing squads. Like, he's very... his ability to rotate and maneuver is like the source of his power and introduce himself or extricate himself from situations. Most squads, because movement speed is relatively fixed, you have to play within a certain distance of each other for reasonable response time. He can move so quickly with his ability because he can use stim basically back to back. So like, he's sacrificing health every time he does it. Which is sort of part of that, in the spirit of sort of extreme sports, pushing yourself, like running in the red line.
If you want to play him conservatively, because you're too scared about the stim takes a little bit of your health away, you can play him a little bit more defensively, like I do, actually. Which is, I don't stim into fights, actually. I usually stay with my team into fights, but if it gets hairy, I stim and get the hell out of it. But I've seen people who, like, are pretty confident in their shooting skills and aren't worried about taking damage. Basically, stim back to back to back to back to just, like, get in there, get the gun first, get the drop on people, shoot, and then hide in a corner and heal up. But super aggressive players are going to love Octane. I think it's going to present a real challenge to defensive players and how they're going to deal with them. But at the same time, if he gets too far ahead of his team.
I mean, we'll see how the meta settles out, because I think it's going to introduce a lot of really exciting stuff.
Like, we have an idea of what it's going to be, but you never know. Like, so we've been playing with Octane's abilities for probably about 6 months, but you just never know what happens until you get it out there into the hands of, like, millions of, like, expert players. So, for example, like, Bangalore, I never saw her defensive smoke.
Oh, put smoke down.
Smoke down, like, right in front of me and run off as, like, that viable of a solution until it, like, got out there. And that's, like, clearly a very valid playstyle. I know what I expect with Octane, but I'm more excited about what people do with it. So that's all of our legends so far. We'll have more coming. Thank you so much for playing our game.
Yes, thank you.
It's been a surreal experience.
Yeah, it's been crazy.
We're hoping we had something good, but we really didn't know what we had until the community embraced it the way it has. So, thank you.
Thank you for supporting us.
And keep streaming, because we love to watch.